Hello and welcome to another episode of the Counter Option Podcast with Joe
Go Big Red.
and Tyler here, Boomer Sooner. A lot has happened since our last episode.
Yeah, a whole lot.
Got some coaching changes, a lot of players have entered the portal, a lot of discussions around NIL, and we're going to do our best to go over all of that. I feel like the best place to start, though, was with Harbaugh leaving Michigan to go to the Chargers.
Yeah, we both kind of saw that happening. It
Yeah.
was writing was on the wall there. I think the biggest move with that Harbaugh move was him taking Jesse Minter with him. But I did see today that Sharon ended up going and getting Wink Martindale to be his defensive coordinator. Saw that this morning.
Okay.
And that
Who is Wink?
Wink used to be the Baltimore Ravens D coordinator.
Oh.
I am like, with that move, I am legitimately going to say, I think it puts Michigan back in a national title picture with that defense that they have.
Sherm Moore, you've already got the continuity there. They're doing a good job of trying to keep it all together. And I'll say, I don't think I've seen at least any notable guys from their team enter the transfer portal after Harbaugh leaving.
No, which is a big sign. I don't think it was more about Harbaugh leaving. I think it was more of the trust that they have in Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the reason that they're staying. They did lose quite a few guys. You know, they did lose McCarthy. I don't know how big of an impact that's going to be.
He's graduation, right?
He's graduating. He's going to go pro, but I don't know how big of an impact. Like, you watch him play, and it's like, okay, he's dinking and dunking and throwing 150 yards a game. Is that... You can replace that. That's a replaceable thing. You're just asking him to manage a game. But the big ones that they're losing are the Zach Zinner, the All-American guard, the Blake Corum, probably the best running back. We talked about that last time. About the best running
Big reason for their success this year.
Yeah, and there's Mike Sanistrell, their big time safety in the back. That was their valve. When things broke down, the guy ended up making
the last line of defense.
Yeah, he made a lot of plays for him. So you have to replace those positions. They get Donovan Edwards coming back. They get a couple corners and a couple D linemen coming back, but I mean, it's nothing too substantial where it's going to be, we're good for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a lot. There's a lot they still have to rebuild on. Who's their quarterback? We don't know. Are they there? Are they going to portal it? We don't know.
It's true. I mean, I feel like, I don't know what their backups are like, who's coming in the wings, and who's out there available right now.
I mean, the only one that I would go after that has Big Ten experience is Tonga Viola, Tua's brother. Played at Maryland.
Is he staying at Maryland?
No.
He's in the portal.
He's in the portal. He jumped in. That would be an interesting one. However, I don't know what he's thinking, and he may want to go to the SEC and try that out just like Tua did. Or he may end up at like a Miami or something like that.
I mean, Big Ten's just as good as the SEC. I mean, it's like if you're in one of those conferences, I think the NFL is going to look at you different. But, I mean, between SEC and Big Ten, you're splitting hairs.
Well, they're essentially the same conference. They have the same caliber of programs. They have the same caliber players, and they also, they just play really good football. Mm-hmm. Even if you're a garbage team in that conference, you're playing pretty good football.
It's true. I'm going next here. So, I mean, I think we both agree that things should be running at a high level, even without Harbaugh gone at Michigan. Probably going to take a step back. I mean, there's so many other teams. Like, it's Alabama. I think they're obviously going to take a step back too. Are they going to be good? Absolutely.
I was talking to an Alabama fan a week and a half ago, and they said that they're going to give Kalen DeBoer a year. And I was like, y'all are crazy.
A year?
Yeah, I'm like, you guys are crazy. You can't even establish a culture.
No.
In like an off season. It's so hard. It takes 2.5, like I was saying, to really kind of get the gauge on it. But then if you're going to fire him after a year, who's going to take that job then? Nobody. Because it's just like the old the old time thing of like, oh, you didn't go to the playoff, you're fired. They'll make the playoff.
They'll make the playoff.
Will they get to the finals? Probably not, but they're still gonna make the playoff.
Well, if you're firing him after 1 year and it's like already this built in, it's just like, well, he was hired just as a buffer so that you could go on to the next guy, and there's a little bit of separation from Saban, which isn't fair to him. He made it to the national championship last year. I think that he deserves a shot at it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But, like, even if you go take a look at the names that were linked to the Michigan job, though. There's some heavy hitters on that, though. Outside of the Sharon and the Minner and the Mike Hart that were already on the team, like they're looking at like Lance Leipold from KU. And now, imagine if he were to leave KU to take that Michigan job. That's a giant blow to that program for what he has done there, right? And then you look at like Kleiman, same thing with Kansas State. It's that way as well too. The big ones that, like, the NFL names that came through, like the Todd Monkins and the Mike McDonalds. The McDonald, of course, he's going to be linked to it because he was a D coordinator there. And Monken, of course, was the OC at Georgia for a few years when they just destroyed people down there. That was kind of that. The interesting names that showed up. One of them was Matt Campbell.
Yeah.
I like Matt Campbell because he's silently a really great coach with what he's given. He's in a recruiting dead zone in Ames, and that's not really an easy place to recruit. But he's
got like one of the best defensive coordinators.
Yes.
Was it Hancock?
Heacock?
Something
like that. Whatever his name is. He's really good. They coach those boys up and they play really, really well. Brian Kelly was there. We talked about that last time. I didn't think it would be a good fit for him. Fickle in Wisconsin. I mean, he's only there a year.
Just started at Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Now, here's the interesting. The next two are the interesting ones. Dave Clawson from Wake Forest.
Okay.
If you've seen what he's done in Wake Forest, he's done a really great job. Like, he was at Bowling Green and won a ton of games there. Granted, it was probably after Urban left and left that cupboard kind of full for him. But he continued on and went to Wake and did just as well. Those offenses have been high-powered.
Oh, yeah.
Those defenses, they've been pretty good too, but never matched the offense, in my opinion.
The name's escaping me at the moment. The quarterback that transferred to Notre Dame. Hartman. So he was there for Hartman?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Well, Sam Hartman was throwing that ball around the yard there and looked really, really, really good. And then he went to Notre Dame in a more pro style, and you kind of saw a muted Sam Hartman. I kind of wanted to see him throw the ball more, but you can't do much about it.
I mean, he was an exciting player at Wake Forest.
Now, PJ from Minnesota was on that list.
Sure.
I kind of thought that would have been a great fit for PJ after reading it.
I kind of felt like him, because where was he at before? Eastern Michigan?
Western
Michigan?
Yeah.
It never felt like Minnesota was like his last stop. Like, this is the next step up, and then... So, yeah, somewhere like Michigan would have made sense to me if they would have taken him.
I mean, he definitely rowed the boat. You know, that's his thing, is row the boat. Like, it's like get in the boat and help row it or get off it. Because if you're not going to be a part of our culture, you're not going to be here. And that's a big thing for a coach like that. But PJ's the interesting one. I mean, I watch what's happening at USC with Riley, and they are saying he's on the hot seat. I could see a PJ going down to USC in that area and maybe turning that around.
I was going to say, do you think it works in LA?
I don't know. The thing that I don't know, you don't know until you try it, right? But the big thing that I do know is he always says he's had a culture that beats talent, right? And it's hard. It's very hard to sit there and say, if he brings in a very solid culture, that he couldn't do that.
Sure, but it's and then it's about trying to convince the 5 stars to play like a 3-star that, you know, it's not being appreciated, and like you got to go out and give it your all every play kind of thing.
Well, I think you go and develop those,
which Saban could do.
Yeah,
like it can be done.
But I also think you go out there and you blend in a bunch of 3 stars with a couple 5 stars. and you get them on the field and you realize that maybe a 3-star is a 5-star talent.
Oh yeah.
However,
Development.
Development, or they played on a poor high school team and their high school team wasn't very good and they were undershadowed by a poor quarterback. It could be something as small as that. We don't know, right? Now
There's one name left.
Yes, the one name that was left that really had me crapping my pants was Matt Rule, and I didn't think it was going to happen, but I wouldn't have blamed him if it did.
I mean, Rule's a great coach. I mean, he's
building
a great foundation there, and it would have taken the wind right out of the sails in Nebraska.
Yes.
So, like, I'm glad for you that did not happen.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
Yeah.
But, like, I watched as I scrolled down and I saw Matt Rule, and the wind left my lungs, and I was like,
No.
do not let this happen. Just don't. And it's not the homer pick of the whole thing because he's my football coach, but I saw what he did in a year. And I've seen some of the stuff that he's done behind the scenes. And if you were to lose that, I don't even know who you go get. Like, that's the problem is, like, would you go get a PJ Fleck? But I don't think anybody would I don't think they would open arms to him.
No.
With the drama he created with him and Frost. I don't think that would have been a good move for PJ.
Yeah.
But, like, we've sat and we've waited for a coach like Rule to come through for years.
What I love, he's like high integrity. Because, in the back of my brain, you're talking about coaches that might have been available if Rule did jump ship. Like, you could go do an Urban Meyer, but I'm like, that's not Nebraska.
No, it's not. And, like, you're chasing a name at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to move on from a Rule, the only two people I should say that I'd feel so happy with would be a Kleiman or a Leipold. But I'm sorry, KU and K-State, they're not on the same level as Rule.
No.
They really aren't. He's got
NFL experience now.
Yes, but he's
proven that he can turn programs around.
And he's very charismatic.
He's
charismatic with the press. He loves the university. I think you hear him. He goes to all the wrestling events. He loves them. It's one of his favorite things is wrestling. He goes and does that, and then next thing you know, he's at a track event, or he's at a girls' basketball game. He's at a girls' volleyball game. He's at a tennis match. He's at a golf outing for the school. He just genuinely loves the college experience and kind of the kids that are there.
Well, it's great. I mean, you want that kind of ambassador as your head coach.
Well, it makes everything better.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's your major money thing, and it's your major money sport in football.
Mm-hmm.
And
but he's showing support for all the other programs.
He's showing support for everyone else, so they feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm not saying it didn't happen in the past, but we don't know. And to hear he's there, or he's taking all the recruits with him to these games when they come in, that's a big thing.
It's a big thing, and Nebraska's got great programs other than their football too. So It makes a great recruiting visit, so you can take him to the basketball or a baseball game or something of that sort.
Yeah, even track, wrestling. I mean, it doesn't matter. Just having that guy that's willing to be like, let's go to a game. I don't want to sit at home. Let's do this. That's big. That's huge.
Well,
that's huge.
I guess we can rest assured that Rule's going to be there at least for another year, which he's building it up. He's going to be there longer than that.
Yeah. And like we're just talking about, Michigan here, but we're also look at the other teams that had their changes, such as like Alabama. They lost like a Caleb Downs. They lost a Caleb Downs to Ohio State. They lost another quarterback recruit that they got, Jalen Sarin or whatever his name is.
Alabama's been having tons of...
Yeah, and they flipped out of there, and they've lost... Who was that wide receiver who went to Texas?
Bond.
Yeah, Bond, their big one, Bond, yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a big one.
Everybody was saying Caleb Downs was the dude. Like, that was a massive... He's the safety that went to Ohio State, right? Yeah.
And he's he's a 5-star safety that I guess...
Started as a true freshman at Alabama.
Yeah. And he's going to be in a top 5 defense next year in Ohio State. I mean, that scares a lot of people in the Big Ten, but we don't even know if he's going to play well with those kids that are there.
It's true. You don't know if it's all going to work there. I mean, Ohio State does obviously have a proven track record, but we don't. I've seen A&M. I've seen big money thrown at players and it not work. So.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but look, they have if you see who they recruited, they got Kasarin's he's a freshman, so he basically backed out of his pledge and went to Ohio State. But they also got Air Noland there. Mm-hmm. They got Will Howard out of the portal. Right? They've got a loaded quarterback room. What's going to happen in a year when one of those guys is like, I'm out because I want to play?
And it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. You want 5 or 6 quarterbacks, but they all going to get reps?
No.
No, not even in practice are you going to get reps. It's just a waste of their time,
Yeah, they're going to be looking for an opportunity if they're not getting it there. So
yeah, and that's the big thing. But I talked last time about how I thought Will Rogers was going to go to Alabama and he's staying at Washington.
That's a big deal for Washington.
For Washington, that they got a starting quarterback with experience there, and that's a big deal for them. So hats off to them, right? I think it's going to be great for them.
I agree. I mean, do you think Jed Fish can match the success that he had at Arizona?
Not year one.
Not year one.
I don't. Year 2 might be closer towards the end of the year, but I think year 3, you'll see it.
I mean, that's what I was going to say with Rule. I think this year you're going to start to see some rubber meets the road with some of the things that he's put in place.
Yeah, bowl game for sure. Even though we talk about bowl games and how they pretty much don't mean anything anymore, which is...
Well, with the expanded playoff, it's even more so. I mean,
it's just these kids are transferring out, sitting out bowl games because they want to go pro and they want to do this, they want to do that. It's not what it used to be. You got a bowl game, you went and played the bowl game, and then you worried about the off-season stuff after that. They don't do that anymore. Those bowl games now don't mean a dang thing.
Nope.
I don't think I've watched one for 3 years.
I mean, the last meaningful one to me that was not a playoff game or a national championship was 11 years ago. OU played Alabama in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, Alabama's going to beat the crap out of them. And
they beat
OU won.
They beat the snot out of them. OU beat the snot out of Alabama. Yeah.
And then of course, the argument came, well, Alabama didn't want to be there because it wasn't the national championship and all this and that.
It just sounds like the Georgia fans right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're at the highest point of your program and you don't get in and you find a way to make an excuse of, we lost to the Alabama team that went to the playoff. Okay, but watch what Alabama did all year before that. They were not that great. Right? They didn't even piece it together until almost the last month of the year.
Right.
When they got rolling with it. And it's not they didn't have the talent. They just had a lot of young kids playing that had no experience and were gaining experience. It's like in the NFL. Those rookies don't get better until the last half of the year.
It's true.
It takes a long time to adjust to a game because going from college to
high
school to college, it's a big difference. The game speed's different. The scheming is different.
Well, the body sizes are different, right? I mean, if you're coming out of high school and you're playing up against a 300-pound lineman in the SEC or the Big Ten, you're gonna get pushed around.
Yeah, and you're the Sun Belt, and your biggest offensive lineman is 280, which is still a big kid.
It's a big kid.
But when you're going up against a kid that's 315, pure muscle, good luck. Whether you're on the D line or the O line, it doesn't matter.
I agree. Well, okay, so we've been talking about the transfers and stuff like that. Nebraska, they've got a few.
Yeah, we got a few. We got really good ones, I think, this year, and I think we were very intentional with who they went and got because they went and got Isaiah Nair. He was at Texas and Wyoming.
Okay.
When he was at Wyoming, he was their number one. And he had almost 1,000 yards, I think, one of the years. I don't remember. Freshman year or sophomore year.
Wyoming.
Okay. Had a really good year. Went to Texas, got hurt, and his
got buried on the depth chart.
got buried. Yeah, got buried, and his confidence got shot. So he jumped back in. If they can rebuild his confidence, that's great.
Okay.
Dante Dowdle, that is a big get for them.
Okay, so this is the one you're liking here.
I really do. Out of Oregon, he let's put it this way: he came back because Bucky Irving came back. He left because Bucky Irving came back. Had Bucky Irving not have come back, he would have stayed there and would have had a 2 running back system. Now, Rule loves this kind of kid because he's a big bruiser.
Okay,
and
fits his scheme.
Yep, he's out of Mississippi. And they want to pair him with, I believe, a Ramir Johnson type or even an Emmett Johnson type who ran really well last year. They just need to have that fire and ice that they had at USC with Reggie Bush and Rondale White.
Oh, man, yeah.
Or Lendell White, whatever his name was.
So Dowell's going to be your second halfback.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for. Yeah.
Come in and just, the defense is already gassed, and they're like, oh, we have to go against this guy who's fresh.
Yeah. This isn't going to be fun. No. Yeah, we're leaving with bruises on us. Yeah, absolutely. Micah Mazuka, a guard, he was at Baylor, recruited by Rule, played at Baylor, was in the portal last year, was between Nebraska and Florida. He went to Florida, and I read somewhere that day one he got to Florida and wished he went to Nebraska because of Rule.
Well, and I mean, Billy Napier, there's issues there at Florida right now.
There's a lot, but I think a lot of what's going on down there is they're not Billy's guys yet.
Right.
I don't think they're going to give him time.
Well, yeah, and the media's already after him.
But, we can talk Florida all we want about their issues, but, look at things that had happened in the past with other schools, like Nebraska. And we talked about Bo Pelini last time, right? Yeah, he was bad with the media. He had whatever it was, but the guy still won 9 football games, right? Napier still is winning 8 games, right? Okay, temper the expectations a little bit. Simmer him down, give him some time.
Not everybody wins a national title in their second year.
Exactly. But I understand. The other thing is I do understand in Florida why they are calling for his head, because they do not want to fall behind the Georgias, the Tennessees, the Ole Misses.
Well, in state Alabamas. Too. There is a pecking order with Miami, Florida State.
Yeah. They don't want to fall behind that, and I get that. But you just can't go off in a Billy Napier. Who are you gonna go get? You don't
bring Urban back.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he would come back to a job like that. Mm-hmm. I think the job he would only want to go to right now is Notre Dame. Only because...
Bucket list item.
Yeah, it's a bucket list one. That's his last job he wants, and that would be it. But I don't know. Another big one, we talked about Dave Clawson earlier. One of his wide receivers is Jamal Banks. Entered the portal. Rule talked to him. I was listening to something this morning, a little bit ago, about how Rule absolutely loves this guy.
Okay.
Fits into the culture perfectly. He's a competitor, and he's they have these off-season things where they want them to go and attend other sporting events, come in and be on time for things, go to class, do all this. And apparently the dude's already got 75 points on his team, and everyone else is behind him, and he's like, you guys better keep up.
So he's a leader.
He's a leader. That's what we need.
I mean, that's it's something you never see on the field, but when you have a great leadership, that it builds a team.
A locker room guy. Oh, yeah. Definitely a locker room guy. And last year they picked their friends to kind of be the captains, leaders. And then I think this year the coaching staff kind of picked leaders of those teams and went down that path. The big name came through too, and Stephon Thompson. He played for Tony White at Syracuse.
Okay.
And people are always asking, why didn't he come with Tony White in the beginning? Tony White really loved Dino Babers.
Okay.
And he didn't want to raid the team.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And makes me love Tony White even more. Yeah. And I don't... It just says a lot about a man's character that's I
absolutely,
love you. I love you, and I'm not going to do anything to you. But, Babers got fired, and now he's like, okay, it's fair
game.
Open
season.
Yeah. Sorry, Fran, but it's open season right now. I'm coming after my guys. So he comes over. I mean, I think he's an instant impact guy at the linebacker position. We're losing Luke Reimer. I think he could fall into the Luke Reimer spot where he kind of flies around the field, makes his tackles, plays well in coverage, rushes quarterback real well. He's just an all-around good linebacker, good football player. And they really need to get more of those into the program in certain spots to help develop the kids behind them. Bly Hill is the last one. He's a cornerback of the FCS from St. Francis. And I don't know anything about this kid, but one thing that I know is he's got 3 years of eligibility and he wanted to play big-time college football. And somebody like Rule's going to be like, let's go.
Well, I mean, at that point, it's like Rule likes him. I can get behind that.
Of course.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You almost have to, because if they watch the tape and they say that he can contribute and be a big-time factor at the next level, then let's do this. Like, let's bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes it better in those rooms to weed out the crap.
Well, competition brings out the best in everybody. So yeah, let's get some bodies in there and just see if he can get to the top.
And he may not.
Yeah,
we don't know. He may not. You don't know. I see Oklahoma had a few.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure some of these guys were big time needs or more of just depth pieces.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get to some NIL talk, but so like a big issue going into the offseason with OU is offensive line. Yeah. And a lot of people are on Bill Biedenbaugh, who's the offensive line coach there at Oklahoma, because we lost true freshman Caden Green to Missouri. Well,
I wouldn't go to Missouri if I was him. I'd stay at Oklahoma.
Well, like I said, we'll talk about that here in a moment. But and then we had a lot of graduation with the offensive line. So a big part of what OU was trying to do in the transfer portal was we need to address offensive line. But we'll start with Jake Roberts here, the tight end out of Baylor. That, from all the sources I'm hearing, he might be the biggest. He's gonna maybe have the biggest effect on the team. Tight end was also a position that needed to get better. After last year, we had some guys that can block, but the pass catching wasn't there, and really we haven't had that guy since Mark Andrews left. That's playing in Baltimore.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill.
Was he a Rule recruit or was he a Aranda guy?
I think he's an Aranda guy because I think he's either a freshman or he was a freshman last year or a sophomore last year. Okay. So, but they had talked to the offensive coordinator, Gabe Eichert, is a podcast I listened to, and they were very sad that Jake Roberts was leaving. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah. Probably a good teammate.
Probably a good teammate, yeah.
And that's really what you're looking for in people anymore, is good teammates.
Next on the list here, we got Caden Woolard out of Miami, and I believe he is a linebacker. Don't know much about him, and from everybody I've heard, there isn't a whole lot on him yet. But as we were talking earlier with Hill out of St. Francis, if there's a linebacker and Venables likes him, I feel pretty confident that at least he's going to come in and do something. So
at least be a piece of depth where they can slide him around on certain downs. Yeah,
right, sure. Right. And now here's an interesting one. You got Casey Thompson coming in. It's pretty much a quarterback, right?
Oh yeah.
But it's pretty much the agreement is, hey, you are the backup to Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
Give him the leadership. Give him everything he needs, and we'll call on you if needed. But
there's one problem I have with this.
What's that?
He did go to Nebraska, so like I do know
you
Casey
know a lot
pretty
about
well.
Casey, yeah.
His dad actually played at OU. He's an OU alum. Here's the big thing that I think you have to worry about if you're Jackson Arnold. Okay, Casey is a big time competitor. He wants to play.
He's gonna push,
and he's gonna push you. Okay, now the other thing you have to realize is you tell him to take a back seat. He may be like, okay. But the minute Arnold struggles, he's going to be like,
he's going to see that door.
Give me the ball, and I'm going to show you. That's if I'm Jackson Arnold. That's where I'm a little worried.
I mean, I think there's signs to be worried there, especially after the bowl game that Jackson Arnold had. And, I'm not freaking out over it. I mean, he had like 4 turnovers. It is his first start ever as a true freshman.
How are you going to judge it on that? You just can't.
Can't, especially because we're talking about that offensive line. That was the piecework offensive line that was put in after we lost a couple guys already. So I don't know how much of it. It looked like a lot of his throws were kind of a few seconds late, and things like that can be corrected. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully Casey can bring the leadership, and it gives Jackson Arnold the push that he needs to take the next step.
And I think Casey will do that. Mm-hmm. I really do. And even if Jackson does sit behind Casey for the first 4 games, I think it will be
better.
Be super beneficial for Jackson.
All right. So next here we have Michael Tarquin. He was a tackle out of USC. Once again, we need to address the offensive line. With Tyler Guyton going to the NFL.
He's so good.
He's so good.
He's so good.
And you know what? I feel like he didn't play all that much last year. He was kind of hurt, banged up. But
when you watch him play, he's so good.
He's a freak. So trying to backfill that position, and Bedenbaugh is going to have a group of guys where he's just going to put the best 5 out there. Maybe Tarquin's that guy or part of that group. We don't know yet, but I'm all about bolstering that depth. And with that, you have, oh my goodness,
Fun one.
It's the guard out of North Texas, in Nwawu.
Nwawu or something like that.
Nwawu, which I do a lot of. I listen to a lot of Gabe Eichert's podcasts, and he is a former offensive lineman for OU. He hasn't said any bad things about these guys. He's like, they need to come in and get a winter in with the strength and conditioning, and maybe they can take the next step. So once again, more depth. Hopefully that can happen.
I think Luttrell recruited him, and I think that
some familiarity there.
Yeah, and I think he's listed as an interior offensive lineman, so he can play guard or center. What I probably feel is going to happen is he's going to play center there because he can help with the calls because he knows Luttrell's offense.
And, I forget which one of these offensive linemen, but there is one that was kind of smaller than the rest, right? And that's typically your center, right?
Yeah, you typically, but that doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you get a 6'9", 350 center, but it's usually a guy that's 6'2", 290, that plays that position.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Sam Franklin out of Texas Martin. He's a D2 guy. And so I would say it's hard to evaluate tape-wise. Is this guy going to come in and be a game changer? But I think a lot of people are thinking he is. Yeah. So right now, Sawchuk is OU's starting running back, but I think they're looking at him as the change of pace guy to come in unless one of these young guys comes in and steps up. So more depth there again.
But yeah, like we were talking earlier with Bly Hill, if they could play at that level, let them play.
Sure.
That's really what it boils down to.
And it is really sad. Tawi Walker, we lost him in the portal. He was a walk-on last year. It sounds like there's a bit of animosity between him and running back coach DeMarco Murray, and that's probably why he saw the door and is going to be playing at Wisconsin. So he's going to do great there.
Or there was tampering. I mean, it could be a number of different things. I don't... that running back coach runs that room. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to do what he says, that's just really what it boils down to. Is you probably just aren't going to be there.
And from what I've heard, DeMarco Murray's very old school. So if you get in the doghouse with him, I feel like it's a hard one to get out of.
I love it. I love it. But it's how he was coached.
It's how he's coached. But I don't think there was tampering because Tawi came back and he played in the bowl game even after he mentioned that he was going in the portal. So he was like, hey, I'm going to come back and at least play this one last game with you guys.
It's fair.
So
I just think he just wanted a different scene.
Different scene. And I think Wisconsin fits his running style better, like that Big Ten style. So
is he a bruiser?
He's a bruiser.
Is he?
He was our bruiser, yeah.
Great. We got another run, Dane.
Here's another one. Dion Burks out of Purdue.
Wide receiver.
Yeah. I was saying Jake Roberts might be the best get, but Deion Burks has got to be up there. A lot of
He's good.
oh yeah, a lot of production there at Purdue, and put him in the slot after Drake Stoops has graduated. I think he fits in right there, and Drake Stoops was very productive there, so I could see that transition very seamlessly there. Next up, you have Dizon Malone.
He's from San Diego State. I don't remember where he played, but he's San Diego State. He's in a group of 5, probably a grad transfer.
Yeah.
My
Spencer Brown. So after the Michigan State, the turmoil that they've had there, they've had some linemen leave. This maybe
crazy.
Yeah. Out of all the offensive linemen that OU's gotten, I think that this is the one that I feel the best about. Obviously, he's got Power 5 experience, and once again, I'm leaning on Gabe Eicher's assessment, but he sees that he could probably come in and be pretty productive here at Oklahoma.
Is he going to play left or right tackle? Did they say?
They haven't said. I imagine he's going to be... So Jacob Sexton, who's our returning tackle, he was playing right tackle last year. So it's whoever Bedenbaugh is going to feel is going to the safest at left tackle and protect Jackson Arnold. But
because Guyton played left tackle last year, right? So he's essentially
Guyton was right.
He was right.
Left tackle was our transfer in from Stanford. Name's escaping me, but so yeah, Jacob Sexton, who eventually stepped in when Guyton got banged up. He could switch over to left tackle, or this Spencer Brown could be the guy. So, that's obviously a very pivotal piece on that offensive line. So we'll see.
Yeah, I would want to put somebody that has experience in that offense on the left side. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would.
Walter Rouse was our left tackle.
Yeah, he was actually. Yeah, he was down at Oklahoma, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I remember him. Yeah. Is he back?
No. So he was a transfer from Stanford. He's a super smart guy, which most offensive linemen are, but
shocks you, but
shocks. Yeah, they're smart guys. But yeah, he graduated, so he'll be going on in the NFL.
Okay.
Which I think his play this year at OU has really bolstered his draft stock, and hopefully Bedenbaugh can have another high round draft pick in an offensive lineman there. And out of all the names, Bauer Sharp, a tight end out of Southeastern Louisiana.
I love his name.
Sharp.
And Bauer.
Bauer, yeah. That's a football name.
Yes, it is. That's a put my hand in the dirt, I'm going to put you on your ass name.
Right.
That's really what that is.
When I already mentioned, tight end was a position of need. Maybe he can come in there and Jake Roberts. And then one of our top recruits, Devon Mitchell, who was originally a 5-star, and then he reclassified to come out a year earlier, and they moved him down to a 4-star. But out of all those guys, they're going to be fighting for who's going to be first string, who's going to be second string. So I love the competition, and I think out of all of it, hopefully we'll see better tight end play than we did last year. So
yeah. You guys got one more, though, didn't you?
Yes. It was a late addition to when we were making this list. It was Kieran Hatchett. So I think last time talking about all these players leaving from Washington, Alabama. This is a Washington guy. He's an interior offensive lineman who played on a national championship team. Yeah. So you talk about the experience that he brings.
He could play.
Piece.
Yeah, he could play center. I don't know. That's the thing is you really won't know until they hit spring ball. But
true.
It's like you look at Washington. They lost even some recruits in that. Yesterday was, or Wednesday, right? Wednesday was National Signing Day for the real National Signing Day.
Yeah.
And Nebraska was able to get Keona Wilhite from Washington too.
Okay.
He's out of Arizona, but you're able to flip him after he came out of his Washington commit. So he's an edge rusher, big thing there too. But as Rule says, I just want to get a bunch of good players and get them in there and figure it out. So.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like the same philosophy there at Oklahoma. And I will say that Hatchett, there was a little bit of, hey, if we get him, maybe we can get his younger brother who's there at Washington as well. Was not the case.
Yeah.
But it's at least we have that door open now. Could happen.
Yeah, it's not always going to happen. You get one, you're not always going to get the other. I mean, who knows? It's just one of those things. It's a crazy thing.
But I mean, that was a lot. There's a lot of transfer going on. And,
It's
obviously,
everywhere though. It's everywhere.
it's crazy because back in the day, it felt like had an idea what your team's going to look like next year, and with the transfer portal, it's like
You
who
don't.
knows?
You just don't. Yeah, like Rule has even said, he's like, you could go to a school, get recruited by a school that loses all their quarterbacks, and then they go to the portal and they get 4. And you just don't know. And he's like, but if, as you see on a transfer list for Nebraska, there wasn't a quarterback on there. That tells you they're going to go into spring to see what they got, see what's going on. And he has said, full disclosure, he said in a press conference was, we will look for a transfer quarterback in May if something doesn't work out or somebody gets hurt, which is a big thing there. That's a giant thing for them to be open about and say, this is what we're going to do.
Sure.
Because most teams don't disclose their plan.
No. But, I mean, he's been pretty transparent. He said, hey, this is how much it costs to get a quarterback in the portal right now.
Yeah. Hey, and you know what? Kudos to him for having the stones to throw that one out there. I mean, but that also goes into what we're going to talk about next with, like, the whole NIL thing, and everything that's going on there. Like, look at what Tennessee and Virginia did this past week with suing the NCAA for antitrust.
Yeah.
That, I mean, my God, that's some stones there. But it kind of feels like
it's different this time.
Yeah, it feels like it's different this time because I know we talked about this the other day, and I've been talking to people about it as well too, where they're like, well, why did the states do that? Well, what happened was when you do the research and look at everything with it, what happened is the NCAA is saying that they violated the NIL rules, what Tennessee did when they recruited Nico. I'm not going to say his last name because it's a tongue twister. By giving him an NIL deal when they recruited him.
Right.
But it never said anything within the rules and the guidelines that they couldn't do that.
Well, aren't they trying to get them on like a new rule that they put in place, and that wasn't what Tennessee was going off of when they made that deal?
Yes, because what happened was, like, from what it sounds like, is they had the original rules, and then a rule flipped, and then they didn't disperse that rule and tell them that they couldn't do that or whatever it was. And they're like, you're in violation. Like, it doesn't say it there.
Well, the rules changes are coming so fast and furiously. Like, how does a program keep up with it when you've got 85 scholarship players?
Yeah.
And it's just too much going on. And you and I have talked about it. Like, it seems like the next piece, and it might not be like tomorrow, but like the next thing that's gonna make a clearer, better product is that these guys are eventually going to have to become university employees.
Oh, they're going to have to.
Yeah, and there's going to have to be contracts.
I mean, Dartmouth already did that with their basketball team. I mean, you look at that whole thing and you say to yourself, that is insane, but it's kind of the way it's got to go. And I listen to Husker Doc Talk all the time, and Doug Ewald. I sent you that. I don't know if you listened to it.
Yeah, but I'm going to.
He basically said everything NIL stuff's going to become in-house, and everybody's going to have to become university employees.
Right.
And it's the only way they can manage that. Now, the downfall to all that is you pretty much lose your compliance department, and you're going to have to create collective bargaining unions and all that stuff.
There's going to be a players' union.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But
full of 18-year-olds.
Yes, full of 18-year-olds that shouldn't be making decisions like that, but they're going to need a real adult in the room to take care of that one. But, like, back to the whole thing with Tennessee and Virginia, like, the federal government has stepped in and sided with them. The days of the NCAA might be numbered.
Oh, yeah.
For the FBS side. Now, it could be Division II, Division III regulations.
Olympic sports, all that will still be in-house or not in-house, but with NCAA.
Yep. And the thing that I've been hearing is that, like, people that are at the Division II and Division III level are trying to tell the Big Ten teams, the SEC teams, the ACC and the Big 12 teams how to do business. They have no idea. It's because they want an even playing field too. Sure. We all get that. But you guys don't get the TV revenue that those conferences are getting, and
we're entering this new era. Yeah, like it's not gonna. Unfortunately, and there's a big difference, I would say, between Big 12 not Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and then like the ACC and
it's
the
giant.
Big 12.
It's giant.
And those are all Power 5 schools.
Yeah. Because you see Florida State suing ACC right now because they basically locked them into a deal with them that ESPN said it's this or nothing. That doesn't get renegotiated until 2035.
Right.
Right? I would never sign that.
And it's a scary place to be if you're a Florida State right now or a Clemson. I mean, because I feel like both of those programs are definitely good enough to be in, like, let's say those top two, the Big Ten and the SEC.
Of course.
Do one of those conferences open the door for them? I mean, I would imagine the Big Ten would love it, even though it's kind of an SEC country, but you're getting the eyeballs from Florida that you don't have.
It would just be different recruiting grounds. It would open that up. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, if anybody from the ACC was going to go to the Big Ten, it would be Miami.
Ooh.
Because think about
academic standards.
Yeah, not only academic standards, but think about when you look at kind of the whole portfolio of the Big Ten. They have New York City and Rutgers.
Okay.
They have LA and UCLA and USC. They have Chicago and Illinois. They have DC. Yeah. And then you would get Miami and Southern Florida. It makes a whole lot of sense for the Big Ten to go after a Miami over a Florida State or even a Florida or whoever.
True, yeah. Miami brings in lots of eyeballs.
And think about an Ohio State-Miami game. Think about a Michigan-Miami. Think about USC-Miami, Nebraska-Miami. That's a giant rivalry right there.
Or if you ever get Notre Dame in there with them.
Exactly.
How did I forget about that? Like, if we're talking about teams that are left out, the rivalry there with Notre Dame and, like, Miami back in the 80s. Like,
yeah, but like that's all of this stems from this whole NIL thing, and it's
changing the landscape.
Yeah, it's big time change. Like, you sent me that podcast from the guy who runs the OU, the OU one, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh my god,
yeah,
like these schools that are in these giant conferences are spending billions of dollars on their NIL.
And because we haven't set up the guardrails yet, it's
the Wild West.
It's the Wild West, and right now it kind of behooves schools to just go out there and spend obscene amount of money. You have a school like Ole Miss or Missouri, and Ohio State. Well, I mean, they're a little bit different because they're a blue blood,
but they're still spending that money.
Ole Miss and Mizzou, like, oh, this is our time. We can finally catch up with the big boys, and
because the OU lineman you were talking about, he ended up jumping.
Yeah, I'll get to this here. So yeah, Caden Green. On that podcast, they mentioned him quite a bit, and the guy that runs OU's collective said that there was, without a doubt, tampering involved there because he's been very quiet with the collective, and when they were in time to talk their new contract or whatever it is that they give these college players, it sounds like his dad was going out and talking to other programs, and Missouri said, hey, we're going to give you 5 times the amount that OU's paying you. Well, OU doesn't really run that way, and it sounds like Nebraska does too. If you listen to this podcast, and I'll post a link or description down when we upload this here, but essentially OU runs their NIL much like a front office does in the NFL, and I think that they see what the future holds, and right now it is the Wild West, but eventually it's going to get to the point where it will behoove them to run this program like a front office. So they have evaluations of every player and what they're worth, and it's like, well, we love you, guy, but 5 times the amount really doesn't. Yeah, bye-bye.
We love you, but bye-bye.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were even willing to come up a little bit off of what they were going to offer. But yeah, when I think OU offers all of their football players, like, was it $30,000 a year?
It was 26.
26.
I think it was 26. Yeah, 26,000 for every football player.
And I think that's a big Venable thing. He doesn't want it to become a locker room issue, which I think that you saw maybe at Miami or Texas A&M when you're bringing on all these kids that are getting millions of dollars. You could stay what Oklahoma is trying to breed is like, yeah, you're not going to be getting paid as much, but you're going to be staying here. You're going to be coached better than any of those other programs that I just mentioned. You're going to have a better shot at winning a national title, and we're going to try to make a better culture than like, give me that money.
Yeah. But unfortunately,
at the end of the day, money's
going to weigh this out, and until they even talked about it on there about instilling a salary cap, and I'm like 100% for that.
Sure, because I don't want this to become baseball.
No,
like I just get so tired of seeing the Dodgers and the Yankees in the playoffs every year. Like, I don't want to see that with college football, and I would like, we're already moving towards this new era, right? And it sounds like it's gonna go towards like what we're seeing with the NFL, kind of maybe. Like that's kind of your template. And I'm all right with that. The NFL is a great product. It's going to require some change for like traditional college football fans. Do I love it? No. I love the old days of college football, but it's not going back to that.
Yeah, and you like look at what Deion does over in Colorado, and he's like, we're going to miss on a lot of really good Colorado kids because we're going to go to the transfer portal. We don't care. And same with Ole Miss. They're doing the same thing, because they're going to spend that NIL money on players that apparently were given scholarships but didn't work out. Now, we talked last time, they don't always work out.
I was going to say, well, talk about the amount of stress that puts on your program. Because it's like, oh, yeah, we went out and we spent like $30 million, which is what A&M did.
Yeah.
Well, $30 million, you better have a good team or like...
Yeah.
And
like it didn't work out.
Jimbo was out the door now because of that.
Again, they backed the Brinks truck up and they dumped all that money on him to get him out of there. I mean, kudos for him to get in that bag, but at the same time, though, it doesn't, like, NIL is also going to be the death of college football. And it's because like this, I don't know, the kicker is going to be upset because the punter makes more money, and that shouldn't be how it is, but unfortunately, that's what's going to happen.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where like I said, the next step is getting these guardrails in place, and I don't know how long that takes. But, I mean, I imagine your big-time blue blood college programs want that as soon as possible because... There's
also been talk that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to form kind of an alliance.
Yes.
And be
they've been meeting, right?
Yeah, they've been meeting, and they said that they're going to be like the semi-pro league for the NFL. Now, if that happens, then you're the NCAA. You're screwed. You're done.
You're done.
You're done. Those are the two biggest names in program or conferences, and if they get together and overthrow you, you've got nothing. You've got nothing. I ultimately think that you should take all of the conference commissioners because they're all smart enough in everything.
Their own organization
to come up Division I or FBS for the biggest thing.
Make a rules committee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take all the conference commissioners, sit them all in one room, have them talk about it and work it out. Not like equal profit sharing because that's not always
do that.
That's not always fair. What like they always say, what's right is not always fair, or what's fair is not always right. Because like a team like Middle Tennessee State, they're not going to get as many eyeballs as a Florida.
Nope.
So you have to find the right television contract for those guys to get them to have some sort of money that they can start building up to go and get these kids. But you have to do that collectively. You just can't sit there and say, I'm the Big Ten, I'm the SEC. We're going to demand X, Y, and Z, because you always are going to demand X, Y, and Z. But a team like, I don't know, New Mexico State, they're
not on the same playing field as Alabama or Georgia.
Can you get them to have something that's more of, a $1.2 million viewage thing? Yeah, probably. But what's that going to get them for football players? Probably nothing more than what they have right now.
No.
That's the thing. But they have to come up with a plan and they have to figure something out. Because if we don't, what do you do?
They will. I mean, I don't have the numbers on this or anything, but we're talking about popularity in American sports. NFL's number one, but I think college football's like they're above NBA, they're above baseball. Like it's funny that college football is above all these other professional sports. So that means like there's a lot of money involved, and the powers that be, I don't think they're going to let that. They're not going to screw it up, right?
No.
So they'll figure it out. It just, the way they've done it so far has been piss poor. I don't know how you do it in a better way, but I think it is going to eventually, we'll get to a place where it's better, at least. It's like I said, it's never going back to the way it was, but
it's an ever evolving thing, and they'll get it figured out. But right now, you're just like, guys, like you're watching a bunch of people fight with each other, and it's not beneficial to anybody.
Like you said, the Tennessee lawsuit,
Virginia
lawsuit, those I think are, 10 years down the line, you're gonna be like, that was kind of like the death blow there.
Yeah.
But I think that's enough NIL talk. And I was gonna say, before we end this today, I had a couple of questions since this is a new podcast, we'll learn a little bit more information about us.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple questions here. Joe, why are you a Nebraska fan?
Well, I grew up in Omaha.
Okay.
So, I mean, Nebraska football was kind of the thing as long as I remember.
If you're from Nebraska.
Like in the late 80s, all the way through the 90s.
Osborne was on top.
It was really hard to not root for the team. Like, we didn't get to see a lot of when I was a child, we didn't get to see a lot of the games. So they were on the radio, and I remember listening to a lot of them with like my family and just really enjoying that time, because we would sit there and we'd listen, and whenever we'd lose, my dad would get mad. And I'm like, Dad, it's just a game.
But that was very few and far between.
Yeah. So when they lost, it was like crap.
Oh yeah, amplified.
Yeah, it was like all the way up there, Mm-hmm. But as I had gotten older and continued to watch them, honestly, I know I talked last time about how I think some of the fans are overboard. It's really about the fans. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the sellout streak. It's there. If you went to a Nebraska game, you got to experience.
The fans were so nice.
Exactly. But it's the atmosphere there too.
Oh yeah.
It's a very welcoming.
They're diehards, but they're not.
Yes.
It's not like Raiders fans, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure when OU won, they said, "Hey man, good game."
Oh yeah.
Right. Like the really diehard fans are the ones that are like, "Good game," and then they leave. They're mad.
They're worried about their program. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah, they're
no
mad
ill
that they
will
lost.
Towards the other one.
They're mad that they're lost, but we're like, can't win them all.
No.
We're very practical, and that's the big thing that I really love about being a Nebraska fan is they're practical, and not all of them are, but most of them that really follow the program to like that nth degree, they are. Mm-hmm. Right? You listen to a lot of former players. They will give you honest reviews. They will tell you everything. And I watch a lot of those things. A lot of things I don't even send you.
Oh yeah.
I'll sit on YouTube at nights after work
watching fan reactions
I'll watch like the radio shows that were being put out the day before. And I like to listen to like certain personalities because I trust their opinion more than I trust some other ones, or even like media outlets like Josh Pate or them, because these guys like they know what it's like. Like I remember listening to one and like Jay Foreman, who was one of our old linebackers who played in the NFL. He was just so brutally honest, and I really appreciated that.
Oh yeah,
because if you're don't sugarcoat it. Be real about it. Just do that.
Right. Don't attack the players. Don't attack the coaches. But you can be honest in a fair way.
Yeah, because they said that they were brought down to Lincoln to assess everything, and they gave him their assessment, and they did the exact opposite. And his exact words were, "Then don't call me again. Excuse me. Don't call me again to do that because I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
I'm not wasting my time. You wasted my time." And I appreciate the realness of that whole thing, but. Going back to why I'm a fan is it's all I know, and I grew up around it, and I grew up I really wanted to play linebacker at the university as a child. Like I did. That was one of my dream things was that, but like unfortunately I had some like health issues as a child where they're like you can't play anything physical, like football or rugby or anything like that, because they were afraid something could severely happen.
Sure.
Was I upset? I was heartbroken. I was devastated.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to play middle linebacker there, but knowing like if you see me and you see my height, they would have put me at fullback. That's what would have happened. But it's what it is. What
Well,
about you?
obviously playing at the University of Nebraska, that's hard to get to that level.
Well, yeah, but it is. But like, it's the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you don't have that ethic to kind of want to put the work in to build yourself and be the best that you can, even just in anything in life, right? It's just not going to work.
It's true.
If you're going to try to skate by, like some of the kids in football these days try to skate by and just go where the money is.
That previous regime there at Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two-hand touch practices.
No longer going to be the case there.
It doesn't work that way. I get you don't want your kids to get hurt, but
you got to practice physicality.
Because game day you can't expect them to tackle.
Mm-mm.
You can't expect somebody to sit in a boardroom and play on their phone and then tell them, hey, you lead this meeting. They're not going to know what to do. What about you?
Why are you I'm an Oklahoma fan. Well, I'm from Oklahoma. Grew up in the Bob Stoops era. So I think I was 4th grade when they won the national title in 2000. And then just seeing the stream of Big 12 championship after Big 12 championship and players like Adrian Peterson and Jason White and Sam Bradford and DeMarco Murray. It was very hard not to be a fan of Oklahoma. And we live here in Kansas City, but during that time, it felt like an identity to me. It's like, well, that's where I came from.
Yep.
And like Bob Stoops was very much about like we're gonna do this thing the right way. It's like you're gonna work hard and no excuses. And so like I very much that resonates with me, and I think it resonates with a lot of Oklahomans with who they are as people, much like kind of like your Nebraska. Like it's the Midwest. Like we're just gonna pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get stuff done. So that's why obviously very dominant program. 7 national titles, and at this point I've lost count of the Heismans, but it's hard not to be a fan, especially when you're from there. So like you.
Yeah, you grow up around it. It becomes in your blood. If you're a sports fan, not everybody likes football.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that, but we happen to really do enjoy that.
Well, okay, so I mentioned a couple college football players, but out of who is your favorite college football player? And it doesn't even have to be Nebraska.
Well, it's very hard. That's a tough one because I watched a lot of the kids growing up. I really don't have just one.
Just one? Okay, who's your Mount Rushmore?
Okay, my Mount Rushmore, of course, is going to be Ndamukong Suh because number one
of the most dominant defensive players,
ever to have ever stepped foot on there. I'm just going to do my Mount Rushmore of Nebraska players.
Okay.
Let's just do that.
Okay.
So there's that. There's Tommy Frazier for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Brooke Behringer.
Okay.
Behringer probably more than Frazier. Behringer means kind of a lot to my family. My younger brother actually has a football signed by him.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. He was in this thing that Osborne used to do back in the day where the football players would come to schools, and he met Brooke, brought him a football, and Brooke signed it with his number. Brooke's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Okay.
But he was kind of the locker room guy in 94 and 95 to keep that together.
Oh, yeah.
So, he's probably in front of Tommy. And Tommy, because of his tenacity and the fact that he had blood clots one year, came back and finished second in the Heisman Trophy.
Won a national title.
Yeah, and won 2 national titles.
2 national titles.
He's just an animal. And then I would have to probably say, if we're going to, I'll just give you... I would probably say Lawrence Phillips.
Lawrence Phillips, okay.
And I'm going to stop there, in my opinion. Or even him and Amon Green are the two there.
Sure.
Arguably the best running backs to come out of that school.
Oh, yeah.
Amon had a very long NFL career and did very well with the Packers, even though he was drafted by the Seahawks, got traded over, had a really good career there. And Lawrence Phillips had so much talent. So much talent. He's no longer with us either, but the problem with Lawrence was he couldn't stay out of trouble.
Mm.
And the only reason he never got kicked off of the Nebraska football team was because Osborne knew if he said bye-bye to him, he was done.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing more he had.
So football was holding them together.
Football held them together. And
Good. These coaches, man, they're like a surrogate father. Like they have to be there for them, and like kudos to the ones that give players second chances and understand like what it means.
Yeah, and he was a tough runner.
Mm-hmm.
He was drafted in the top 10 by the Rams and got himself into a bunch of trouble. And then went over to NFL Europe for the Niners, made a resurgence there, and then fell back into trouble again.
Yeah.
He just couldn't stay out of it, and that's the problem, and it's really hard to rank those guys to say where they are. But if I
different
had
positions.
Yeah, for my top 5, I would say that's that, just because it's not one player from the state of Nebraska, that's that. I won't sugarcoat it. I never really followed many other programs until a lot later in life. I really only followed Nebraska.
No, I think that's typical.
Yeah. But I've become more of a fan of just college football in general, especially when you have the opportunity to watch the smaller teams on a Tuesday night.
Dude, I love that. Or Friday night, which you're not going to see any more of the Pac-12 after dark.
It's upsetting because you could come home and catch the second half of a game.
You could be watching football from especially when you have when Nebraska went over to Ireland. Did they play an early game that day?
Early game for us, yeah.
Was it 11 a.m.?
I think so. It was either 11 a.m. or 1. But
so, 11 a.m. is usually your earliest kick, but if you can watch college football from 11 a.m. to 12 or 1 at night, my God.
Yeah, that's what made it so great. You could always say, I caught a game. Whether it was,
or even if at work they're playing on the TVs in the background. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My eyes are always over
checking the
seeing what's going on.
scores, seeing the plays, yeah.
I'm just a natural lover of the sport, and those are just the 5 that come to me. Okay. What about you?
Okay.
Just do the top 5 since I did top 5.
Yeah. I think the more and more you talked about it, I'm like, I'm going to have to go.
Because it's hard to just say one player.
Top 5. So you were talking about you wanting to be a linebacker for Nebraska. When I was younger, I wanted to play quarterback at Oklahoma, which I'm sure is the dream of every kid in Oklahoma wants to be, or a lot, we should say. But so I grew up in the early era of Stoops, and so first one would be Jason White for me, Heisman winner. I love his story coming back after 2 blown out knees and still doing it.
Oh, yeah. That was a great story.
Then right after him, you had Adrian Peterson, I was lucky enough to get to see one college football game from him, and then once when he was a Viking, when he came here and played the Chiefs. I've never seen anything like it. He's a
generational guy.
Yeah.
Just like Sue.
Yeah. And this is going to be a quarterback heavy list because, like I said, I love quarterbacks. Next one would be Sam Bradford. I'd never seen another quarterback that he prototypical. He's like your 6'3" guy. The most precise thrower. I really wanted it to work out for him in the NFL. Another Heisman winner, and he was a Native American, so that tied into he's an Oklahoma City guy.
Nice.
Which I think Jason White was also from Oklahoma, Tuttle, which is always cool to see that those guys grow up and get to play there.
Yeah, Bradford didn't really have such a great pro career. He bounced back around.
Well, those injuries started to stack up for him. That shoulder.
Yeah.
And then, so we got 3 now. I'll say my favorite for last.
I know who the favorite is.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to put a defensive player in here, and I think my favorite defensive player that ever played at OU, or at least since I've been watching it, I didn't get to see the 70s and the 80s and all that, but Gerald McCoy. We're talking about another guy who grew up in Oklahoma City. Got to play there, and it was probably the last really good defensive player that OU's had, and I think that's going to change here soon. But went on to be a all-pro guy there at the Buccaneers, and when he was there on that 07-08 team,
That was a good team.
Those were some good teams. He held down that defensive line. And then my favorite player, and I think this is the case for a lot of Oklahoma fans, because it embodies what I was talking about with like that hard work and resilience, is Baker Mayfield. I mean, his story is one of the best, I think, in college football. The walk-on, and even here in the NFL, it still continues that people keep doubting him. He responds.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I know he turns a lot of people off with his attitude, and I think he's really toned it down since he was in college. But
he has a. If anybody I'm going to give a pass to with their attitude, it's going to be Baker. For that reason,
it really turns the locker room around. He is able to, like, I think when he went in there to Tampa Bay, was able to pull that locker room together, because that is the kind of leadership you can get around, and like that guy's gonna go out there and like butt heads with people without a helmet on, like
yeah. But he's
a psycho.
But he was a walk-on at Texas Tech.
Lost to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, lost the job to Mahomes, and then transferred to OU. Still as a walk-on, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll tell you a story, because I don't know if you're not an OU fan. I don't know if you'll know this, but he walked on to OU without notifying the football staff.
Really?
Just showed up to the first meeting one day, and he went up and introduced himself to Bob Stoops and said, "Hey, I'm here to play football."
I love it.
And Bob Stoops was like, "Oh, okay," and he's like, obviously knew of him because he played at Texas Tech, and he's like, "All right." Yeah, and this was just, and we were talking about this earlier, OU had just won the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, and Trevor Knight had the game of his life.
Yeah.
So it's like, you want to, it seems like this thing's pretty locked down. Are you sure you want to? And like, he had the balls to come in there, and it's like, no.
And he beat Trevor Knight out.
Beat Trevor Knight out. I'm going to be the quarterback at Oklahoma. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah, so. I remember when that happened, and I was like, what's going on here? And then, because he walked on there, and like, I was like, this dude walked onto 2 football programs. Mm-hmm. Nobody gave him a shot at either one of them. And then ends up being the number 1 draft pick in the NFL.
Heisman winner.
Yeah, and a Heisman winner. You can't take that away from him. You can't. That experience for him.
And if OU had a defense in 2017, they probably would have won it.
It would have been lethal.
Probably would have won it. Because, I mean, they took Georgia to the wire. I think it was overtime.
Yeah.
So.
And Georgia had some okay teams during that time, but they're not like what they were.
That was the Chubb and Sony Michel team.
They weren't that good though. No. Outside of Chubb and Sony, they weren't that good.
And I think Swift was like their third back. It's just like, good lord.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Well, and then Roquan was on that team too.
Bears are idiots. I mean, I grew up a Bears fan too, and like watching them trade Roquan Smith, the next Brian Urlacher, I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense.
Now the Ravens are they have the most solid defense because of that.
With Roquan and Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
God dang, man. Both of those guys can run and read at a very high level.
All right, so this is the last question I'm going to ask you here. What was your favorite season as a Nebraska fan?
2010.
2010. The last year in the Big 12.
2010, last year in the Big 12.
Okay, and this is because of Sue?
No. I mean, yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yes and no, but that was a hardworking football team.
Right. It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy for them anywhere all year.
They had to pull it together to get to the Big 12 championship.
Yep. And that's the reason.
Was that the first Martinez?
That was Taylor.
Taylor Martinez?
Yeah, it was Taylor Martinez. And again, he's a lot like Baker. Nobody really gave him a chance, but Pelini and like even Amir Abdullah on that team too.
It's a good team.
But like they had so many good football players on that team that people wrote off that they recruited very well. And that team was just tenacious. And they were hungry. And it was the last year of Sue, but you heard Mac Brown say, who you worried about? Number 91. And he took on 5 guys on that whole offensive line.
The year before, Texas kind of got away with it in the Big 12 Well, not kind of. They got away with it in the Big 12 championship because Sue was wrecking shop then too.
But
right?
they didn't. That was the year. No, that was the year that they got away with it in the Big 12 championship.
And then in the next year they played OU.
Yes, right? I think so. I believe so. But I remember that ball going out of bounds and going out of bounds at 0, and I was like, oh shit, we just won the Big 12 championship. And they're like, there's 1 second left. I'm like, you guys are fucking
Beat
crazy.
the undefeated Texas team.
Yeah, and then because Justin Tucker went out there and kicked that field goal and won it, and I was like, you, god damn it, we got
hosed.
We got stole. They stole it from us.
That's
And-
what happens when the Big 12 officials are all from Texas. And
Well, yes, and at some point I would say Texas ruined the Big 12
oh yeah, they are to blame.
for a lot of it. You know, that's why you
Upset
see
Missouri, Colorado,
Nebraska. Yep. They all left because Texas was we want the biggest piece of the pie. We get you are the biggest university. We get it. But there's everybody else underneath us.
It's true. Can't have a conference with just one team.
No. God no, or like the spoiled child team.
Oh yeah, they are very much the spoiled child. You talk about the hard work and all that. That usually isn't what's you're talking about when you talk about Texas. I mean, we're shitting on Texas, but it's the truth.
It's not hard to do though.
And
That's
a lot
the
of
other
people
thing.
like to qualify them as a blue blood, but it's like they had a couple good years in the late '60s, early '70s, and then
I mean, DKR had
who
some
is
good
an
teams.
OU alum
Yeah, he had some.
takes
good,
an OU alum to go in there. No.
He had some good teams there. But
And then Vince Young, like you have to have a generational talent. But I mean, we can in a later episode we can get into all the issues at Texas.
we
but,
can shit on Texas for a full hour if we want to, but we're not going to do that right now.
No.
What about you? What was your favorite season?
Favorite season for me, gonna talk about one of my favorite players here. It wasn't Baker, but I would say it was 08. It was with Sam Bradford, and you had DeMarco Murray, and you had Gerald McCoy, and that was the year I think OU at the time had set a record for like most points scored in a season. That offense was lethal. You had the game against Texas that they lost in the Cotton Bowl. OU's starting linebacker had gotten hurt, and then just the last like 2 months, or like I'd say that November, where Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Texas are all vying for a spot in the Big 12 championship, and they're all in the top 10. So it's like whoever is the number one out of all that is likely going to be playing in the national title. Obviously, you had Crabtree taking down Texas. It was great. One of the best games I'd ever seen.
What an animal.
And then eventually OU, I think, housed Texas Tech. I think it was like 65-13 or something like that. And that, Bob Stoops knew how to play the BCS. He's like, okay, we beat the crap out of this team. We're going to jump.
Yeah.
Eventually ended up playing Mizzou in the Big 12 championship and winning, and playing that Tebow Florida team, which DeMarco Murray was hurt. And I think Major Wright, like one of the first plays, OU had a receiver out to like
Blew him
catch
up,
it.
yeah.
Oh my God. It would be targeting today, but killed him.
Yeah, no, I remember that game. I do remember that game because that kind of set the tone.
Oh yeah, set the tone.
Set the tone for Oklahoma that game, and it did not go very well.
Did not go well. I mean, I think it was a 10-point game. I can't remember the score,
But they couldn't match the physicality. That's for sure.
No, that was a great team, but
on both sides.
Both sides. But yeah, that was my favorite season, and like I said, I think Bradford won the Heisman that year, and it was a special season. I would have loved if they could have closed it out with a title, but still, even without one, that was one of my favorites. So, all right, man. I think that's enough for this week's episode.
For sure.
Be another 2-week gap, and then we'll cover some more. I'm sure the college football gods will have enough material for us.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot going on.
We'll have some more NIL stuff to talk about for sure.
Transfer portal.
Yeah.
When's that open back up? Because there's
it opens back up after spring practices.
After spring
May
practices.
15th, I think, is when it opens. But as I said, they can go in there anytime and get kids in. It's all going to be based on numbers, but we're going to start to see some departures in Lincoln, and I'm sure we'll start to see some in Oklahoma too.
Like when you see okay, this is what the depth chart's going to get it's going to look like. I'm sure both coaches are going to be like,
Rule's very good at sitting people down and being like,
it's probably not going to happen.
you're probably not going to get any playing time here. you probably should look elsewhere.
What do they call it? Getting processed.
Yeah. Well, he'll look at him and be like, we would really love to keep you, but yeah, if you want
I
to
think
play,
it
you're
speaks
not
to the
going
love
to.
he has for the players. Is like, as much as he'd love to keep you and have you on the team, but he wants you to have that opportunity to go make make a name for yourself too.
And that's a big plus. And I'm sure Venables is the same way.
Oh yeah.
Too.
Oh yeah.
He wants what's best for him. And if not the best for him, then go find where it is. So
All right, man. I'm gonna
right.
close this out.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
All right.